Hello, and welcome to this talk. My name is Thomas Schubert, and I'm the narrative designer of games like Subnautica and the Talos Principle. And today I'm going to be applying some game design and philosophy to the topic of playfulness in the digital community. So there's this suggestion that the creep of the digital world into our social and communal spaces is playing havoc with our ability to play in those spaces. There's the child who comes home from school to find their bullies have left insults on their social media accounts and they can't escape them. There's the influencer who visits the finest restaurant to take photos of the food but forgets to actually taste it. And there are the countless people who created social media accounts to connect with their friends, but now find themselves in the endless feedback loop of internet tribalism. The phenomenon is real. What was once a bad day at school is now a quantifiable statistic, which can then go on to affect all facets of a person's life. What was once an ill-judged joke, lampooned by friends, is now a sackable and even imprisonable offence. What was once a photo album to entertain or bore the in-laws is now a multi-million-dollar business. These are the side effects of the growth of the digital community. The mutation of something playful and personal into something inescapable and deadly serious. The question I'm concerned with is this: what is the root cause of this loss of playfulness, and what can we do about it? Like a good analytic philosopher, the most important thing to me is defining the terms. What is this playfulness we're missing, and what is it distinguished against? First, I want to define what I mean when I talk about something as a game. To me, a game is anything with rules and goals. Snooker is a game. Super Mario is a game. But building a house is also a kind of game, with rules set by the laws of physics and goals set by the concept of what a house is. You've lost the game of house building if water comes in through the roof. And you've cheated if the house was already there before you started the game. A game is rules and goals. What I love about this definition is it means that almost anything is a game. Life itself is literally a game, provided you're prepared to assume that it has a goal. Now, this definition gets circular quickly, because whatever goal you think is worthwhile is just a means to enjoying the game. But enjoying the game depends on truly believing that there's something worthwhile in reaching the goal. But it seems to work, so I just don't stare at it too closely and try to have fun. So now, if almost anything can be a game, what exactly is play? Well, I suggest playfulness is one way that we can participate in a game. It's one end of a spectrum. This is games. And this is play. Not sure you can read that on my potato quality camera, but there you go. So I suggest that playing a game is distinguished by the experience of autonomy and creativity by the players. Play, in other words, is a game which is essentially consensual, cooperative, authentic, somehow unpredictable, and hopefully fun. Now, these are obviously subjective qualities which describe the participants' mental states rather than their physical actions. It isn't the nature of the game, i.e. the rules and the goals, which makes it fun, although that is part of the story. It's the way in which the participants engage with the game which decides its playfulness. Think about a game of Snakes and Ladders. The rules strictly deny any decision-making by the players. In terms of player freedom, the game is every bit as determinate as the instructions on flat-pack furniture. But for children of a certain age, Snakes and Ladders is absolutely play. While for an adult, it might be the height of suffering. At the same time, constructing flat-pack furniture may be the height of suffering for some children and the pinnacle of playfulness for some adults. It follows that there's another end of this game spectrum, which is the opposite from play. It's distinguished by a sense of obligation, a lack of choice, opacity, and seriousness. Snakes and Ladders can be playful, but only when your life doesn't depend on the outcome. Work can be fun, but only when you have other options. And life can be a game, but only when the rules are clear and fair. Everything else is a chore. Something that Buddhists and Mary Poppins have in common is knowing that if you can find the joy in peeling a potato and the fun in taking out the trash, then you have understood the only rule in the game of life. So, over here, there's consent, creativity, and I would say low stakes. The outcome when you're playing is less important than the process of play. And the other end, there's work or chores or strife. And at this end, things are obligatory. They're prescribed. They're high stakes. So the question for us is, if that's true, then what's changed to cause the loss of playfulness as our communities move online? If I look at the whole system as a game designer, I see two big changes. One, I don't know where I'm going to put this, codification. And two, big changes to rules around proximity. So let me take each one of those in turn. First, codification. There's been an obvious shift in our digital society towards gamification, quantification of our social spaces. In the old world, there's the few hard rules of physics, and then there's the more what you'd call guidelines, the rules we've made up to try to make the game more fun, like using shared languages or just not getting up in people's faces. And there's a general recognition that your actions may affect your standing in the future. But there is not usually a games master in the real world overseeing all of that, forcing the guidelines to be followed, quantifying the outcomes, and deciding who gets to talk most and loudest. And this is what Twitter and Facebook are increasingly doing. Some of the players' autonomy to set their own rules is lost. Online, my ability to raise my voice, or grab my friend's arm, or dance a jig, is decided by the platform. The digital city is rules-based in ways that our old cities are not. Second, proximity rules. The virtual world radically changes the rules which determine the proximity of the players. This shift is subtle, but I think it's more radical than codification, and it affects us in ways that we're only just starting to grapple with. In the old world, unless you're working in professional media, there was a hard limit on your social reach, on the number of people in your social proximity. Your reach was basically no greater than you were able to shout or prepared to travel. Today, that reach is potentially infinite, and at the same time, absolutely limited. I can speak to millions of people on the other side of the world, but only if Mark Zuckerberg allows it. These changes in rules of reach come with a simultaneous blurring of the social guidelines. We mostly all agree that a conversation between two people alone in a room, or two people in a private email chain, is, barring surveillance, private to them. We largely agreed that they have the moral right to say whatever they like to each other, so long as it's consensual and no one gets hurt. But in the physical world, I'm almost always perfectly aware of who can hear me and who can see me, based on obvious factors like who else I can see and hear. I know and accept that if I shout something potentially objectionable or dance on a table, the reaction is going to be different depending on whether the table is in my kitchen or in a nail salon. But online, these proximity boundaries are much less apparent. If I post a GIF to my Facebook wall, is that like dancing in my own kitchen? Or is it more like dancing in the street? If I post to my Twitter, is that more like yelling in everyone's faces? Or is it more like everyone else is eavesdropping my personal thoughts? The rules are not clear. The result is, it's a bit like the whole of society has been in a room dancing. And now some people have decided they want to play rugby. But everyone still thinks that they're following the same rules, playing the same game. So instead of working out between them where the line is between the dance floor and the sports field, we're all just running around, bumping into each other and blaming each other for it. Suddenly, we're in a game with rules we don't fully understand and that we can't escape. So we're having less fun and we're taking it all more seriously. As if all this wasn't hard enough, these confusions over proximity have gutted the natural immune system of ordinary social grouping. In the old world of small, persistent, geographically based social groups, familiarity between the participants makes for understanding and cohesion. If one person talks too much, the group copes by saying, "We love you, but can you shut up so someone else can speak?" If two members have irreconcilable moral differences, the group learns to change the subject. There's a sufficient degree of trust and understanding between participants that conflict is resolved by information exchange and adaptation of the social guidelines. But in the new world, most of the groups are much too large for our ancient social practices to function. So if those are the two big changes in the social game, increased codification and confusion over the rules and guidelines of social proximity, what can we do about this? If the difference between obligation and play is in how the participant approaches the game, then the difference between our old society and our digital one must be that we've reduced the scope for free expression. The rules don't seem clear or fair to anyone, and we're treating it much too much as if our lives depended on it. But for a game to be playful, the joy of playing needs to be less than the cost of losing. If the virtual community were really a game, and I were a game designer trying to make it more fun for everyone, I would make two changes to the meta rules. First, explain the rules of the digital space and make them fair. If there's going to be a moral or legal difference between private and public digital spaces, we need to make it clear which is which, and we need to reclaim the virtual public domain for the people to ensure that consistency and fairness applies across the rule set. Second, we need to allow for private servers with custom rule sets. If some people want to dance, and some people want to play rugby, and some people want to share toothbrushes, don't put them in the same space and force them to follow the same rules. Private digital spaces should be no more regulated than private physical spaces, i.e., whatever is minimally necessary to protect people from violence and coercion. And people should be able to opt in or opt out depending on what kind of social games they enjoy playing. For a game designer, it's like everyone is playing the game and they're perfectly happy with it in their own little, with their little modifications over here and this rule set there and this rule set there. And then I brought out an update which takes away their ability to edit their own rule sets and simultaneously updates the main rule set to be totally incomprehensible. This is not how you design a good game. And you see the results because people are not having fun. And at the same time, what I've just laid out there is a rules-based solution to a human conflict. They may make the game easier to play, but they don't stop anyone from taking winning it too seriously. We can make things easier by putting the trolls in one room and the goblins in another, but it doesn't stop them trying to kill each other. Better than drawing a line in the sand between the dancers and the rugby players might be teaching them to recognise when they're playing different games so they can better draw the line themselves. Our common goal in the game of life is to work together to keep our societies both safe and playful. It may be that further regulation of the digital world is ultimately less effective in that task than building more understanding and accepting relationships right here in the world we already inhabit. Thank you for listening.